Fourth Way by P.D. Ouspensky. This is a continuation of Chapter 6. And just remember that although the book was written by Ouspensky, Ouspensky was actually a student of Gurdjieff's. So all the questions are put by Ouspensky and the answers are given by Gurdjieff. Question. I did not understand the difference between being and understanding. Answer. You see, there are two different things. Understanding is a combination of knowledge and being. What is the limiting factor in ourselves? It is definitely our being, which means our capacity for understanding. What is understanding? It is connecting one bit of knowledge with another bit of knowledge. For instance, you will see that understanding depends on being if you take the elementary idea of being. Man is divided into different I's, or groups of I's, which are unconnected with one another. If one I knows one thing, a second I another thing, a third I yet another, and they never meet, what kind of understanding is possible? From one point of view, it may look as though a man has enough knowledge, but since these I's never meet, this knowledge can never be brought together. This is the state of an ordinary man's being, and it proves that he is and cannot have, that as he is, he cannot have understanding. Understanding always means connecting things with the whole, and if one does not know the whole, how can one connect? In the system, you must try to understand. Only what you understand gives positive results. If you do something without understanding, it will not give much, for only what you understand is valuable. Question. I find it difficult to understand the idea that one does not need faith. Do you not need to have faith in the system ideas? Answer. No, faith will not help. You have to accept or not accept the ideas on the basis of your preparation. You come to these ideas with certain material, and with the help of this material, you decide whether to accept them or not, according to whether you understand them or not. For yourself, you can use the word accept, but we use the word understand. If you can understand, you do not need faith. There is absolutely nothing in the preliminary ideas that need faith, because in some cases, as on the psychological side, you can verify everything, and in some cases, as in studying the universe, there is the idea of scale. I do not see a single idea in this system which requires faith, and where faith would help. On the contrary, I think faith would make things more difficult and stop you instead of helping you. Question. If for a moment I see mechanicalness and go against it, I sometimes see and understand something new. What gives that understanding? I'm going to read that question again. If for a moment I see mechanicalness and go against it, I sometimes see and understand something new. What gives that understanding? Answer. It's a matter for observation. You will get an answer to your question only if you observe facts and see the internal and external conditions which accompany understanding and the conditions which accompany lack of understanding. Question. Is there anything else one can do except self-observation to further one's understanding? Answer. Yes. You must understand what one is doing and why one is doing it. The more one understands, the more one can get from the same efforts. But the chief thing is to remember oneself. The more you remember yourself, the better you will think, for you will find new machines. If you are conscious of yourself, you will find you will not need this mind. If you are conscious of yourself, you will find you will not need this mind. This mind will serve you for thinking about tables and chairs, but if you want to think about greater things, you will be able to use better machines. Question: why cannot I understand the least thing when I think about it, but sometimes understanding suddenly comes? Answer: understanding always comes that way. You understand, then you cease to understand. But if all attempts to understand something go wrong, try not to think about it, but try to remember yourself. That is, to be emotional, and in time you will understand. Understanding does not become permanent at once. As in everything else, there are many steps, and you can understand something one day and not understand it the next day. For you may be more conscious in the same circumstances one day and more asleep the next. So many days may pass before it becomes your own. Question: does one understand through the emotional center? Answer: understanding is a combined function of all centers. Each center separately can only know. When they combine all their knowledge, this gives understanding. To understand something, one needs at least 3 centers. Question: did you mean that one must understand every side of a thing? Answer: no. I mean that first you must have an idea on which line, on which scale, of which whole you are thinking. And then, if you speak or think about a separate thing, you must understand the separate thing in relation to the whole. Only this is understanding, finding the place of this thing, the meaning of this thing, the relation of this thing to yourself and to other things. Try it, but you will find that it is not as easy as it seems. Question: do we understand nothing, however limited? Answer: yes, simple things sometimes we understand, but if something is a little more complicated, we lose ourselves and we do not understand. We want to understand big things without realizing that, in actual fact, we cannot understand the simplest things. If we begin with them, then gradually we will begin to understand more. But if we begin with big things and refuse to think of or observe small things, we shall never understand anything properly. Question: isn't it ever possible to understand emotionally without understanding intellectually? You sometimes feel a thing that you cannot understand. Answer: then it is feeling, not understanding. Emotional understanding is very good sometimes, only you cannot verify it. But if you can look at a thing from the point of view of one center, another center, and a third center, then you really understand. And even the direction of centers is not sufficient by itself, for knowledge is necessary. Only when knowledge is connected with the direction of centers is it understanding. Question: how can an intellectual understanding pass into emotional understanding? Answer: as I have said, understanding very seldom works with one center. The work of one center can be information or feeling, but not understanding, which is the function of several centers. 2, 3, 4, maybe more. Question: is there a way in which I can test my understanding of a thing? Answer: you ask without indicating the thing you mean, and this shows that you do not yourself understand what you are asking, because for every separate understanding there is a definite test. Suppose you say that you understand how to get here from where do you live. Then if you take your car, if you have a car, and arrive here, this would mean that you have a test for your understanding. In everything else, only practical application will show whether you understand or not. Question: If we reach a certain stage of understanding, shall we be more use to the world? Shall we be of more use to the world? Answer. First, we must be of use to ourselves. When we reach the first stage, we can think about the second stage. If we are asleep, we cannot be of use to anyone, not even to ourselves. How can we understand other people when we do not understand ourselves? Men 1, 2, and 3 cannot understand one another, and on this level, understanding is simply accidental. If we move in the direction of man number 4, we begin to understand one another. Question. What do you mean by understanding one another? Answer. When people speak, try to explain their views. They cannot. They cannot even repeat correctly what they have heard. They change things. And misunderstanding grows and grows. One invents a theory. Immediately, 5 others are invented to contradict it. Thousands of years have passed from the beginning of creation, and in all this time, people never understood one another. How can we expect that they will now? So first, we must understand ourselves. We do not see our situation and realize our mechanicalness. We do not see that this is not understanding. No, we do not see that this not understanding is a law. Question. How can I understand better my mechanicalness and see that I am a machine? Answer. We can do nothing without trying. If you want to make sure whether you are a machine or not, try to do something that a machine cannot do. Try to remember yourself, for a machine cannot remember itself. If you find that you can, it will mean that you are not a machine. If you find that you cannot, it will prove that you are a machine. And then, if you realize that you are a machine and want to find out whether you can cease being a machine, again, the only method is to try. Question. Did you say that only people of equal being can understand one another? Answer. This is not understood quite rightly, because if 2 people have equally wrong being, they will not understand one another. It is not equality which brings understanding between people, but a certain level, not only of being, but also of knowledge. Different levels, such as men number 5, 6, and 7, presuppose levels of both knowledge and being. Men number 5 are supposed to understand one another. Men number 6 understand better, and number 7 understand fully. Even men number 4 understand one another as compared with us, but we cannot understand one another, or understand only occasionally, for a moment, and at another moment cease to understand. We cannot rely on such understanding. People who know one another very well may work together for years, and at certain moments do not understand one another. This is why the place or the conditions where we are is called the place of confusion of tongues, because we all speak different languages. For this reason, in a right school, you must first of all learn the language in which you can speak with other people in the school, and then, using this language, if you use it in the right way, you will understand one another. That is why a new language is necessary. If you do not learn this language, or if the language is wrong, you will never understand one another. Question. Can the same word have a different quality of meaning according to the level of the people who use it? Answer. Yes, it may have. Words begin to acquire objective meaning starting from the level of men number 4. Men 1, 2, and 3 are purely subjective, and everyone knows every word in his own way. But if people know this language, or even a few words of it, they can use it in the same meaning. Question: if you understand one word completely, would that mean that you got to the stage of man number 7? Answer: no, you cannot understand one word completely and another incompletely. You have to know them all on a certain level, and then your being changes, and you find many more divisions. So your language will become more and more complicated, and at a certain level, perhaps you will need new words, new forms, because old forms will no longer be sufficient. Question: does understanding of a term or word vary in relation to the degree of being? Would the word love, for instance, mean one thing to man number 1 and another to man number 4 or 5? Answer: certainly. We can see already how the same word means one thing for man number 1, another thing for man number 2, and yet another thing for man number 3. But on the level of man 1, 2, and 3, this is mechanical in the sense that people cannot help it. They understand according to their level, their capacity, not according to the meaning of things. Question: what are the indications of a change from one level to another, say from number 3 to number 4 or 5? Answer: man number 5 is one. He has unity. He does not live in this constant conflict of egos that we have. He has self-consciousness. He has control of higher emotional center. So he will know himself what the change is. Other people will know only what he shows them because he can control himself. Man number 4 knows his aim and how his aim can be attained. He goes with open eyes while we go with our eyes shut. Question: what did you mean by saying in one of your lectures that understanding cannot be different? Answer: if people reach a highest level, they cannot understand things differently. This refers to the highest level, but since we aspire to reach it, we must take it as a principle. If people understand things differently, it means that they are all wrong. In a small way, you can find examples of it even now. If two people really understand something, for instance, if they can do something equally well, they will understand one another. But we lost the habit of judging things from the practical side. We judge them theoretically by words. Question: cannot you have some understanding before you have complete understanding? Answer: we cannot speak in absolutes when we speak about ourselves. We can only speak of relative values. Complete understanding is very far, but we can speak of less understanding and more understanding. If you continue to try to remember yourself and not to identify, understanding will grow. Question: could you explain more what you mean when you say that understanding means understanding a part in relation to the whole? Answer: if you understand only a part, it is not understanding. It would be like blind men trying to explain the elephant, one by the tail, another by the trunk, and so on. Understanding means connecting the parts with the whole. One can only begin from parts, or one can begin from the whole. But whatever one begins from, the more connected things are, the better one understands, if the connections are made rightly and not merely an illusion. And I'm going to pause here and continue next time. Till soon.